Everybody, everybody's John the Other here. And at the point of the beginning of this recording, I have watched 1 minute and 12 seconds of the video that I'm going to be responding to, called Dear Motherfucking Men. Well, called Dear Men. I inserted the motherfucking. And I already know I'm going to be pissed off by the end, so I'm going to try to contain my emotional response and just give rational rebuttals, because this is some young feminist presently trying to engage with men, so this is as honest as I can be in my response to her.
Just think about, why is a woman acting the way she is? It's not like we wake up in the morning thinking, ooh, I'm gonna be a bitch today!
I don't care why you're a bitch. It's not interesting. The fact is that you are acting like a bitch, and therefore, to all intents and purposes, you are a bitch. If you don't like the results and the way people respond, well then, modify your behavior. This is a pretty simple lesson in life that I understood when I was like 6 years old. Are you still in kindergarten?
Hey guys, and I literally mean guys.
Are you sure that you don't mean figuratively? Because literally is now used to mean figuratively, as opposed to actually. And if used factually, then literacy requires that literally mean the thing that you said, you see, which would mean redundantly, actually, men. You see?
Men of this world, this video is geared towards you. I have one wish, just one.
Just one? You only have one wish? Well, that's clearly bullshit. But let's hear what your wish is today.
I really wish that you could spend one day in the life of a woman, and no, I don't mean giving birth or being on your period or PMSing, nothing physical like that. I just wish that you could spend one day in the life of a woman so you would understand what it's like to be a woman and all the shit that we go through, because we go through a lot of shit, and I really don't think that you guys understand sometimes the extent of the shit that we go through. Seriously.
I find it amazing that you just delivered that giant heap of fucking nonsense and then followed it by saying the word seriously. We live in a world saturated by public messaging about how goddamn hard women have it, and when you look at them individually, these so-called problems, they're all first world problems.
What really pisses me off is men who say they hate feminists.
Well, hate feminists or hate feminism, speaking, I guess, only for myself. I don't hate feminists or feminism. I just find it to be dishonest and untrustworthy and violent and, you know, a whole pile of other negative adjectives. I don't hate it though, because if you hate a thing, you afford that thing control over your emotional reactions. And I'm much too self-aware for that.
What do you mean you hate feminists?
Oh, your second follow-up to that. What do you mean you hate feminists? Well, I guess for guys who actually do claim to hate feminists, what they probably mean is they find feminists to be hateful people, and therefore they hate them. Thanks for giving me that opportunity to clear that up.
Feminism, at its core, means equal rights for men and women. Simple as that.
Feminism is just about equality. Simple as that. Oh, appeal to dictionary. You're so silly. Of course, they pursue equality for positive outcomes. If there's a large number of male chief executive officers of companies or successful politicians, they want to artificially elevate women into an equal or greater number of those positions. But there's no seeking after equality of any negative outcome, like criminal sentencing, or women ending up homeless, or women killing themselves, or dying in workplace accidents. Not the slightest whisper from feminists about the vast majority of negative outcomes which are unequal. Feminism is about equality is a giant, steaming, white-hot, filthy, foul lie. There is absolutely no possibility of an excuse that this blonde, flat-faced liar is misled or misunderstanding or confused and actually believes that feminism is actually seeking equality. Do I need to hold up this book again? This is a lawyer and feminist and university professor lobbying for murder by women against men to be legalized in the Canadian so-called justice system.
So hopefully you are a feminist. I'm a feminist, you should be a feminist too.
I'm not a feminist, you should not be a feminist too. I'm a bald man with a beard, you should be a bald man with a beard too. I mean, how far are we going to take this? Should we all just be exactly the same? Actually, what you are is a member of the leisure caste.
If you think that men and women should have equal rights, bam! That's all there is to it.
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 Bam! And I'm sorry if these extremist feminist groups are wrecking it for the rest of us women.
I'm sure I'm not the only person who noticed that you just used the word feminist and the word women as if they are interchangeable synonyms of one another. Feminism is a political ideology. It's a thing formed from ideas. Women are a biological demographic. Of course, that's just the beginning. You're claiming that extremists are ruining for the rest of, I'll just say, feminists now. The problem is, you're basically a nobody. You're probably going to become a fairly well-known feminist because I can see from your video you've got very high production values, you've got good quality lighting, you've got a pull focus, so you've got a bookshelf behind you which indicates, ooh, knowledge and authority. Meanwhile, you've got it out of focus and you're in focus and you're very beautifully lit, etc. I mean, it's a highly produced video, so you either have a media studies degree or you've got a crew helping you produce these videos, which means you're not going to be a nobody for long. But you claim that the extremists are ruining feminism for the, quote, real feminists, right? The extremists are the real feminists. The ones driving policy, the ones lobbying the courts, the ones teaching university courses. They're the real feminists. If you're not in the activism arm of feminism, if you're just one of these public clown feminists, then you're the clown, they're the real feminists.
But they just scream louder than the most of us, so it's really not my fault.
Sorry. Actually, it is your fault, because if you fly the flag of feminism, alliteration unintended, if you advocate under the banner of feminism, and what you're advocating is actually humanism, what you are doing is providing legitimacy and plausible deniability to the crazies who advocate murder, who advocate elimination of due process in the courts. If you advocate for anything close to humanism under the banner of feminism, you are legitimizing the crazies who actually have access to the courts, to university, to policy decisions of our governments. So yeah, it is your motherfucking fault. And that's the easy answer. The hard answer is that you are actually an academic feminist and you're fully aware and you're connected to these psychopathic advocates, lobbyists, and basically mobsters, and that all of your public advocacy is a deliberate and knowing pretense. That's what I think, based on the level of production value of your video.
But I really do think that all of us should be feminists. All right, I'm not going to talk about feminism again because I know the dreaded F word.
Blondie, it's not the word that we dread, it's the fascism, the censorship, the violence, and the hatred that we dread. Yes, those are dreadful things, and we dread them. Whether you call it feminism or come up with some new, shinier name for it, it's the policies that are repugnant, and the people advocating those policies. Like you. No matter that you are a superficially attractive young woman, you're still advocating for a fascist, hateful, violent cult, which differs from an evangelical religion only in the content of the message, certainly not in any of the qualities. But do continue.
Dreaded by all men, so I'm not going to talk about it, but the reason I'm going to say this is because it really does piss me off when men say that they don't like feminists.
If you don't like being not liked by people, if you find that objectionable, maybe you should try to be likable. It's just a thought. I mean, liars and censors and totalitarian bigots are kind of an unattractive group. Maybe you shouldn't be one if you want to be liked.
What really pisses me off is men that call women bitches and blame the feminist movement for the reason that they are single.
The first thing I thought when I heard this blonde bimbo rattling on about one other thing that pissed her off is, who gives a shit? Why do I care what pisses her off? Why should any of us care what pisses off this little privileged princess? Then she started rattling on about men who blame feminism for not being able to be, I don't know, get a date or a girlfriend or something. And I wondered, is that even a thing? Now, I know there's men who blame women because, you know, they're basically completely toxic. And if women were less toxic, maybe they could have a girlfriend, if anybody would want such a thing. But honestly, I'm going to leave that alone. It's just too much squirrel for me.
And I have to read you this article that I found on my laptop.
What? You found it on your laptop? You found an article on your laptop? Well, first of all, that's a really weird turn of phrase. You found it on the internet. But you held up your laptop. Okay, I get that. Sometimes I hold up my laptop too to indicate that, that I'm reading off it. But I do this to indicate I have a laptop. I never do this. I never bring the whole thing into frame so that you can see the Apple logo. And I have to wonder, was that a product placement? Did you actually just get a paid product placement in the middle of your feminist video? Seriously?
That I found on my laptop. And
it just showed up right on my laptop, just like magic.
I'm going to read you a part. It's called The Sexodus, Part 1, The Men Giving Up on Women and Checking Out of Society, and it's clearly by an anti-feminist.
Well, the article you're reading is on Breitbart.com, which is the traditional right-wing, commentator source. So obviously that's anti-feminist, but, most women are anti-feminist too.
Marriage is dead. Divorce means you're screwed for life. Women have given up on monogamy. Not true, which makes them uninteresting to us for any serious relationship or raising a family. And it continues on later on to say, this is my favorite part, by the way. Social commentators, journalists, academics, scientists, and young men themselves have all spotted the trend. Among men of about 15 to 30 years old, ever-increasing numbers are checking out of society altogether, giving up on women, sex and relationships, and retreating into pornography, sexual fetishes, chemical addictions, video games, and in some cases, boorish lad culture, all of which insulate them from a hostile, debilitating social environment created, some argue, by the modern feminist movement. I'm sorry, but that is wrong on so many levels. You're blaming feminists for the fact that you're hibernating.
No, the author at Breitbart is blaming feminists, but Breitbart is a traditionalist conservative commentary source. The men who are in fact a part of the movement being talked about, which basically is called Men Going Their Own Way or MGTOW, they're basically assessing the social climate and the legal climate, which by the way is controlled by women, and are deciding not to participate, just to opt themselves out.
I really can't stand men blaming the feminist movement.
She can't stand men who blame the feminist movement. Wow, that's really sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. The problem that I think she doesn't quite grasp is that these men don't care what she can or can't stand. They're not vying for her affections or her approval. They have decided that she and everybody like her can go pound sand. Meanwhile, of course, she is still working from the model that people are seeking her approval, and so she's going to explain to them what the problem is, as if they're listening in any intent other than to mock her.
And I will explain to you why. I will explain to you what it's like to be a woman.
You really don't need to. We've heard this before.
And I will explain to you.
Honestly, you really, really don't need to.
I will explain to you why.
Oh, she's gonna do it.
Hopefully someone will understand.
The world's job is to understand her.
I open my fridge, decide there's no food.
Alright, up until this point I have done this video as a live response, meaning my responses are the first thing that came to my mind as I saw the content of the video. The section I'm about to review I've watched once before, and I realized on watching it that I'm going to have to provide translation. Because we're being lectured by somebody from a different social strata than us. And if you haven't studied the different social strata, perhaps you might take what is being said at face value and accept it as literal language, but that's not actually the message of what's going on. So, as the next section plays, I'm going to provide translation so that the actual message can be understood as it was intended by the original speaker.
So I put on some clothes, don't even bother with the makeup, and head to the grocery store.
Now, despite the fact that most of the existing feminist narrative is that women are under enormous pressure to, dress a certain attractive way and do their makeup, which is time-consuming and expensive, and do their hair, which is time-consuming and expensive, and, present a certain way to be attractive and feminine, she'd made none of the following efforts, and, as we will see, got positive attention from a number of men, which she later complains of, but we'll get to that.
Store. I do not ask to be hit on. I do not ask to be verbally harassed by creepy old men.
So she goes to the grocery store to get some chicken, apparently, and a creepy old man, well, never mind creepy, because that doesn't actually tell us anything about him. That only tells us the word creepy is non-descriptive, except it describes her emotional state. It doesn't describe him. Creepy doesn't tell you about his height, his hair color, his style of dress. It doesn't tell you about his breath. It doesn't tell you about how much or how little money he makes. Creepy is a description of her emotional state. So it's just her putting a value on a guy. So he was old, perhaps relative to her, and he was creepy, which means she felt creeped by him. What happened was this guy attempted to have some sort of a social interaction with her. Maybe he said hello, maybe he said, oh, you're good looking, maybe he said, boy, you remind me of my daughter. We don't know exactly what he said. Apparently he licked his lips. I'm willing to bet that's an embellishment, although maybe he did. Maybe he had fucking chapped lips. But the foundation here is that somebody wanted to have a social interaction with her who she saw as socially beneath her. In fact, she didn't even see him as human. Remember, her one wish is that guys should be able to go through life, living life as a woman, to understand all the terrible things that happen to women. It's a tragedy. Well, maybe she ought to go through life as a man. A human being trying to have a social interaction with somebody else who is of a higher social caste. And that's the core of the problem of being a woman, is most men are below your social caste, but because they don't live in the world of women, they don't see themselves as less than human.
And I know you guys think that women overuse the term creepy.
It's true that women do overuse the word creepy, but it's more accurate and informative to suggest that they misuse the word creepy because they think it is outwardly descriptive. You say this guy or that guy was creepy, you're actually telling nobody anything about that guy. What you're talking about is your internal emotional condition. That you had an emotional reaction which you describe with the word creepy. Now, this guy was apparently, according to the narrative of this blonde woman, 50 years older than her. I'm guessing that she's at least 20, which makes him at least 70. Now, assuming she can do basic arithmetic, and the guy wasn't 40, we're looking at a 70-year-old man, or someone older, which makes the licking of his lips basically normal. An old man licking his lips, an old woman licking his lips. It's like old people lick their lips more often because they're, old. We actually don't know what the social interaction was. My guess is it would be, a relatively innocent old man trying to still feel like he had social interaction in the community that he lives in. But all we really know is that this blonde woman felt repulsed by him, and that's nothing but a betrayal of her own biases. It doesn't tell us anything at all. Nothing about him. Nothing.
But if there's an old man that's 50 years older than you licking his lips at you, that is creepy. I don't know this man. He's a stranger to me.
And we don't know you. You're a stranger to us, and here you are lecturing on what is or what is not acceptable according to your special princess standards.
And I know what you must be thinking. Okay, well, you're just talking about old men. But guess what? There's random creeps, and I live in a big city, so this is even more likely, that I encounter on a daily basis.
Time for more translation. There's random creeps populating the city that she lives in that she encounters on a daily basis, which means on a daily basis people try to have social interactions with her. Oh, what a hardship. Oh my God. Because she's a member of an elevated social caste, and they want to feel that they're validated by being able to have a momentary positive social interaction. But to her, these are all creeps, because if they're not above or at her social status, which means of higher economic and social position than her, because hypergamy, right? She can only see people above her as viable when they seek her attention. Those who are below her social station, below her economic station, those are creeps. What kind of guys are any of these people? It doesn't matter, because the feminine sorting algorithm is only concerned with social station. If you're below her, you're not even a human being, and you should be, put down or put in a cage, or maybe confined to a section of the city for the undesirables and untouchables.
And you think it's old men, but it's not just old men. Let's talk about the pickup artist movement, started by a whole bunch of like 20-something-year-olds all around the world, and it's very much prevalent in Toronto because I have actually encountered, and my friends have encountered, these pickup artists, and it's kind of scary because they film YouTube videos about picking up girls and trying to have sex with as many of them as possible, and they put these videos on YouTube.
Well, pickup artists are guys who recognize, either consciously or unconsciously, that social value in the mainstream of our society is conferred by women. And so they have developed techniques for bedding as many women as possible. Whether these techniques work or not isn't really the point. And I think a lot of them do work pretty well if you apply them properly, although it's not of terrible interest to me. But pickup artists are a manifestation that social approval for men is conferred by women. You don't like that somebody's developed a technique and a technology for applying social manipulation to raise their own status by using women's conferred approval in the form of sexual favors. Well, you know, it must be so hard. It must be such a fucking burden to be a member of the elite status group who is able to confer human value or deny human value to other people. My heart bleeds for you, baby.
Guys, when you blame this whole feminism movement for the reason that girls are giving you the cold shoulder, please don't, because that is certainly not the reason. It's the fact that there's a whole bunch of creeps.
There's a whole bunch of creeps. This needs translation again. What she means is that most men are below her social status, not because she is a person of great accomplishment or wealth or intelligence or, breeding, simply because she's young, superficially healthy and good looking, and therefore she can date upwards. She can mate up. She can demand the attentions of people of higher economic and social status than herself, because people mostly think with their instincts. They look at her and they go, ah, or at least their gamete cells go, ah, good breeding possibilities. Not that people are trying to necessarily crank out babies, but that's what drives their reproductive instincts, their mating instincts. So, to her, men who are of lower or equal social and economic status to her are automatically creeps. It doesn't matter what kind of guys they are. They're just creeps because her sorting algorithm evaluates position rather than personality.
And we really don't know who to trust. We just learn to distrust everyone on the street.
Now, of course, this requires more translation. Doesn't know who to trust, has learned to fear everybody. Oh, what are we talking about being afraid of? Someone who might ineptly proposition you to go on a date or compliment you at the grocery store or maybe in the lineup at Starbucks? Well, no sane human being is afraid of that. It's just like, no thank you. Thanks for talking to me. Have a lovely day. Or if they're really persistent, hey, get lost. Words, right? Oh my God, in the grocery store. Oh, a lightning bolt might hit me. No. What she's actually afraid of is that someone of lower social caste is going to, out of confusion of their own position in life, not knowing that they're a peasant, not knowing that they're a subhuman to be stepped around and avoided, might deign to talk to her, might try to have a friendly social interaction, say, hey, you're good looking, or, comment on a magazine, somehow start a conversation, which, if they are not of the correct social caste by demonstrating wealth or position, dressed nicely in nice clothes or wearing expensive jewelry or driving the right kind of car, well then her social caste is lowered by her acceptance of that conversation, which ruins her elevated status. That's actually something to be afraid of. That's the subtext of what she's saying, that she assumes you understand, because of course she's elevated and she is the determiner of social reality. That's how to understand what she's saying. It's not some insane fear of being, gang raped in the grocery store, because that's a fantasy. That's just not real. It's being lowered in social caste by having a peasant, someone who is not of elevated social caste or economic caste, come up and say, hi, nice to see you.
Second of all, going back to this article, guys, it's not that we don't want to get married, it's that we don't want to get married at 17 like our grandmothers did.
What? She thinks guys want to get married? No. don't want to get married. Not at age 17, not at 27, not at 37, not at 57, not at 67. That's the point. Guys don't want to marry you. They don't want to date you, they don't want to see you, and they don't want to talk to you. That's the male sexodus, as it's called in that article, as it's called in Dr. Helen Smith, I think, her book, The Men on Strike, or sometimes called the marriage strike. When people are trying to shame these guys, they call it failure to launch, they call it Peter Pan syndrome. The guys doing it themselves quite often call it men going their own way. Nobody wants you to marry them at age 17 or 27 or 37 or 47. They just don't want to talk to you at all because they recognize that you're toxic.
My grandmother got married at 17. She had her first kid at 17, aka my dad. I finally found myself this year.
Were you going to the Chaise Lounge?
I know what I want now, I know what I like, and I think those are qualities that only help you when you're in a relationship. So I think that's important for guys and girls to do. Just take some time to be by yourself, to be single, and get to know what you like and what you want with life.
Now, if we were to give that statement a literal reading, we would see that she's in fact encouraging men to avoid women, to avoid dating, to avoid marriage, to avoid the punishing ladder of career, and simply to pursue their own happiness in their own way. The subtext, of course, is take some time and get to know yourself and your needs and wants, but don't take too long, because your job is to please somebody else.
So no one else sways you to make those decisions. Guys, girls today are more independent. We're more career-oriented. We like to go on more adventures and travel.
The claim that girls are more independent is superficially correct. In a more traditional model of society, women were dependent on men for income, and we had a social dynamic that reflected that, and there was some equanimity between men and women. Now, we have 40 to 60 years of affirmative action in hiring, in government, in education, in a whole bunch of different fields, artificially elevating women and putting them above men, so that a lot of women do have now careers and substantial income, and consequently do a lot of independent stuff with their own money. That's fine. What Blondie here is saying, though, is, guys, don't punish women for pursuing all this stuff. Women are more adventurous and independent. No, they're not. They're not more adventurous and independent. They simply have much more support from state and private institutions, which elevates them. And that means that if you are trying to compete, and remember, in mating, men compete, women select, if you are trying to compete for the attention of some female, you're no longer competing just with the other men around you. You're now competing with major institutions with massive funding streams elevating women in education, elevating women in hiring, affirmative action, subsidies and grants. Your wallet is now competing with Obama's wallet. It's not that you're going to punish these women who do these things. It's just that they have priced themselves completely out of the market. And, why would you try to compete with somebody who is funded by a national government's financial system? It's just completely illogical. It's not that you're punishing her. It's just this game is no longer worth the candle.
And that's not something that should be punished. That's something that should be celebrated. And definitely we should not be called bitches because we're more independent.
The thing is, women are not more independent. They're just better financed by a huge number of social and public institutions. And thus they are financially and socially elevated above where the vast majority of men see even an interest in trying to engage. Because women, despite all their elevation and supposed accomplishment, they were, financially supported, financially buoyed up by federal grant, by, affirmative action, and all this woman benefiting business that's been going on for half a century or maybe even a century. Despite all that, they're still playing the game of, you gotta pay me for my attention, but now you're competing with a national wallet instead of just the other guys around you. And guys are going, that's bullshit, I'm not gonna play that game. And you think you're being punished?
And that's why it makes me so mad when girls are being blamed, and especially feminism is being blamed for the fact that guys are isolating themselves.
Well, so you call it blaming women for their successes, and what's really going on is just an evaluation of risk and benefit, or risk and possible benefit, and a decision being made by an increasingly large number of men, and it's growing all the time, that the investment, the effort, and the risk is simply not worth the time, because women have got eyes only upwards financially, and as women are raised financially through affirmative action, through public grant, through federal policy, while they are still playing the game of you gotta pay me for my attention. The fact that this is difficult to comprehend really doesn't speak very well for women's supposed higher intelligence or higher social conscience.
Guys, if girls are going out and seeking adventures, doesn't that give you more motivation to do the same?
Now again, we're going to have to do a little translating. It would seem on its surface that she's actually supporting men going off and pursuing their own interests. In other words, she's supporting MGTOW. She's not, though. What she's actually saying, when you translate it through the feminine lens, is because women are now higher economic status relative to men than they were 30 years ago or 100 years ago, you guys better get on your horse and earn some fucking money. You better perform. You better stand up straighter. You better have a shinier watch and a bigger, fatter wallet and a better job. Because if you want to play the game of getting your DNA propagated into the next generation, you have a higher bar to jump over than your dad did or your grandpa. Once translated, this woman couldn't be a stronger argument for MGTOW if she went out and studied for a year and made that the purpose of her video.
I know you might be discouraged sometimes. I mean, you definitely should not approach women on the street because 99.99% of the time that will not be effective.
Translation, don't approach your superiors. Bow your heads. Know that you're peasants and you're walking amongst royalty.
Yeah, but I just want to say that it's not completely hopeless.
I have to admit, I watched this part, the part that you just saw, and the part following a couple of times. I had to rewatch it before I figured out what the hell she was saying. Because it seemed so totally insane to me. It seemed so completely disconnected from any reality that I understand. But let's watch, and I have the answer. I figured out what it is she's saying.
I mean, because women are so much more independent and seeking out adventures and stuff, that is exactly how you find a girl that you want to spend time with. I mean, if you go on adventures and you seek out similar things, that's a great place to meet a person that's like freaking awesome. So, I mean, if you like certain things, if you like certain interests, and if you join clubs, that's a great place to find a girl. So your situation is not entirely dire, and you definitely shouldn't go into hibernation mode like this article suggests. I'm telling you, I just thought it was so bullshit that I'm gonna link it down below if you want to read it, because I really do want to know what you think about this article, but I just thought it was complete BS, because blaming feminism for this...
Blame? I mean, you could blame feminism, you could blame traditionalism, but blame doesn't matter. Who gives a shit? Blame? Blame is looking backwards into the past. What you do with the information is looking into the present and into the future. So whoever is to blame actually doesn't matter. I actually have done a video thanking feminism for waking men up to the shit deal that they've had almost all through history, and getting them faced away from the traditionalist role, getting them faced away from continuing to devote their lives to women. I'm thankful to feminism for that, for becoming so toxic, so malicious, that it woke men up and got them addressing their own problems. And, you know, you asked for people's opinions, and so I'm providing this one. You're probably not going to like it, but of course you won't be much bothered because I am below your social caste, aren't I? I'm not, I'm not super good looking, I'm not super rich, and therefore I don't actually exist. And if I were to come up to you in the street and say, hi, how are you? That would, to you, be a creep, creeping on you. Which, by the way, makes your request that people be respectful towards you doubly fucking hilarious. Because you have, earlier in your video, condemned people who had casual, friendly social interactions with you. You've condemned them all as creeps based on your evaluation of their social and economic caste. So be respectful. I'm as respectful as you deserve, which is not at all. But thanks for watching, and thanks to everybody else. And as always, have a lovely day.